Sarah Brooks is one of those people who is hard to describe, so I'm just going to start there. Sarah is a mom, she's a blogger, she's a writer, she's a speaker. She works with marginalized teens. I remember first hearing Sarah at a national conference on youth ministry when she talked about, this is back in the day, like for like and follow for follow. And I remember her saying, if you don't understand that, you need to. And so it was like, man, this woman gives such energy and passion. And then I got to know her and found out that her whole life is energy and passion. Life as of late is her blog, and there's fun stuff on there. And I stumbled across one thing that you're all going to use in a Devo. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you. Here it is. She asked one of her teens, okay, what is a real, authentic friend? Tell me what you want in a real friend. And they said, I want a friend who will ask me how I'm doing twice. Once for the fake answer, and then for the real answer. I want a friend who will wait and press for the real answer. Sarah, I love that. Why did that stick out to you?
Because it's so true. How often do people ask how we are? And we're like, fine, fine. And rarely do we get the follow-up of, no, really, how are you? And then you're like, oh, shoot. Okay, I'm actually not fine.
Well, then, Sarah, let me ask, you went through the snowpocalypse there in Fort Worth. Did you guys lose power?
We did not lose power. We lost water, and we gained an entire family that came and lived with us who happened to be your son and grandchildren. So it was wonderful. It was fabulous.
Thank you for housing my homeless, or rather powerless kids, and I didn't know all of that before I asked her to be on here. Sarah, you have such a gift in communication, but you have taken it to a group of teens that may not always be welcome in our youth groups, or at least may not always feel welcome in our youth groups. Talk to us a little bit about that journey.
Sure. So it's funny that you mentioned that blog post about asking twice, because I think this is where I find myself in ministry now. So last summer, I was at a local plant nursery and I was picking out some flowers for my patio. And there's about like a 3-week window while they're alive and everything looks nice before I kill them. So that's what I was looking to buy, was like the 3-week plant. And while I'm at this nursery, I'm looking at these ferns. I'm also on the phone with a friend of mine. He's 15. He's hilarious. He's so smart. He has no idea. He can house an entire large pizza by himself and then ask what else there is to eat. This is this kid. He's awesome, but he also comes from an incredibly hard background. And his life is just very hard. It's full of gangs and drugs and things that I cannot even remotely relate to. And so we're on the phone, I'm looking at the ferns, and I hear him say, well, I got shot last week and I'm okay, but I'm really having a hard time with it and I don't know who else to tell. And he talks to me about how he's terrified. He doesn't want to leave his house. He knows that he has to get revenge. He knows that there has to be retaliation, but he doesn't know how or when. And he's asking me what he should do. And it was one of the many, many times in my journey with Jesus where I have just thought, what in the world is happening right now? Have you misplaced me? I do not feel like the right person for this job. I feel completely out of my element. I didn't grow up like this kid. In fact, my life was the complete opposite of his. I don't want to brag, but I was pretty much a professional Christian growing up. My dad is a preacher. I was a preacher's kid. And, typically there's 2 types of ministers' kids. There's the rebel, and then there's the holy one who follows all the rules and goes to all the things. Well, I was the holy one. I was a very holy, very good preacher's kid. I was at every event. I was at every camp and retreat, and I was probably leading parts of it. I mean, I loved church. I was always there. I've spent time on staff at churches, involved in different ministries. I mean, for a very long time, my life was very church-centric. and honestly very buffered and very privileged. And so it's hilarious to me that I am where I am today. And it started several years ago when I asked, when I prayed what at the time felt like a nice biblical prayer. I prayed, "Here I am, Lord, use me." And that was it. I just left it all open ended like that. And so the Lord essentially answered my prayer by like taking a stick of dynamite and throwing it in my comfort zone, being like, "All right, let's go. You're going to leave it like that? Let's go." Seemed like a great prayer at the time. Now I realize it's kind of a dangerous prayer. But I love teenagers. I've always loved teenagers. And in answer to my prayer, the Lord started taking me further and further outside of church cultures and church settings, and further into our city and into these marginalized communities that are often overlooked and misunderstood. And he put me in the lives of teenagers in communities that I really had only previously heard about through like headlines or maybe an angry Facebook post, right? He put me in the lives of these students where I didn't know anything about their lives. Communities of undocumented students. So many undocumented students here in Fort Worth that are struggling to get legal paperwork because their parents have never done it. And they're terrified to go to the doctor. Students on the LGBTQ spectrum using words that I'm having to Google under the table because I want to love them well and I don't know how to do that. Students who have only known a life of crime and violence and they've never seen life modeled where you even graduate high school. Students who are transient and homeless. Students who, for COVID, the realities of remote learning in a volatile home situation has essentially blown their entire high school education. I mean, these are situations that prior to knowing these kids, I'd only seen about them and heard about them as political issues, maybe. And suddenly they became people with faces and stories that I loved that were very complicated and very hard. They were not headlines to me. They were my friends. And they were not coming to me. They were not coming into my churchy world where everything made sense. And if it didn't, I had a nice Bible verse for it. They were not coming to me. I was being sent to them where a lot of things didn't make sense. And my little platitudes that I grew up with weren't really cutting it. I mean, things got real. And I found myself often asking the Lord, like, am I in the right place? I feel very underqualified for where you have me. I think you've taken me too far. I think I am too far on the edge of the fringe. This feels very fringy fringe, and I'm not sure that I'm equipped for this. And then I remember the story of Elijah. And if you'll go with me today, I want to remind you of this story of Elijah. Runaway Elijah, 1 Kings 19. You know this story. But even if you've heard it a million times, I want you to hear it with me again with fresh ears as we think about our hurting and our marginalized friends. Because as God's prophet, Elijah has experienced these incredible moments with God, mind-blowing moments. Like Elijah saw God raise a little boy back to life from the dead. Elijah saw God bring fire from heaven and consume this altar that was completely wet in front of, 850 false prophets. He watched God do that. He watched God end a 3-year drought by bringing this epic rainstorm that Elijah both prophesied and also ran ahead of. He ran ahead of the storm and also ahead of Ahab's chariot. Like, dude has done some things with the Lord, right? He has done some things. And yet, he's a human who lives on earth, and it's hard. And so when Jezebel sends an assassin for his life, like, I'm going to take you out. It is now that Elijah's like, I'm out. This is too hard. Nope. So Elijah takes a servant and he runs as far as he can to the farthest fringe he can get to. He runs 120 miles to Beersheba. He then leaves his servant and he goes another day's journey by himself. He sits down under a tree, 100% alone, 100% depressed, completely overwhelmed. And he says, take my life. I'm done. End it now. This is too hard. You have taken me too far and I don't have anything else. I'm done. I can relate to this moment. And a lot of the students that I work with can relate to this moment. Maybe they're not talking to the Lord yet, but they're in this moment of like, I'm put a fork in me, I'm done. And it is in this moment, in this place, where Elijah is very far from where he should be, very far from where he's supposed to be. He's deep in pain. He cannot see clearly. And it is in this moment that God seeks him out there. He sends an angel to Elijah. And hear this, before the angel addressed Elijah's spiritual needs, he addressed his physical needs. So the angel says, hey, get up and eat. You're going to need some food. And he points to a cake he baked. When I read this in my Western context, I'm guessing it wasn't the kind of cake that like I'm envisioning, but it's a nice thought, waking up from a nap to like a nice red velvet. Probably wasn't that. However, angel bakes this cake thing. Elijah eats it. He goes back to sleep. The angel wakes him up again and he touches him this time. There's physical contact. And he says, hey, you need to eat some more. We need to get you good because you have a long journey ahead of you and you need to be healthy to make it. I love this scene. And it doesn't matter how many times I've heard this story, I just can't get enough of it because it is such a poignant reminder that no one is ever outside of God's reach. Nobody is ever too far, too off his radar. You can't run far enough. You can't isolate yourself effectively enough. You can't hide enough. You can't dig a pit deep enough. You cannot be too depressed for God to be able to reach you. He will always find you. He will always be able to reach you. So when I think about the students in my life and I look at this story, I see what God does not do with Elijah. He finds Elijah hurting and on the fringe. He doesn't come to Elijah and say, anxiety is a social construct. He doesn't come to Elijah and say, what's your deal, man? It could be so much worse. He doesn't come to Elijah and say, your depression makes no sense to me. I feel like you're doing fine. God doesn't say any of that. He meets Elijah where he is. He sends a companion on his behalf to Elijah. He sends this companion to the obscurity that Elijah has tried to bury himself in, the furthest fringe of the fringe of the fringe that he could get to. God sends a companion to go sit with Elijah, to put his arm around Elijah, and to say, you look like you could use some dinner and a friend. Can I just be here? I mean, this scene, you guys, this scene. So one of the ways that I meet my fringe kids, it's so weird to say that, but one of the ways that I meet these teenagers in my community is by facilitating support groups at their high school during school hours. And it's through a program called Teen Life. If you're unfamiliar with them, you gotta check them out because they're so great. But the particular school that I'm at, the people are amazing. The school is a mess. It's one of the lowest ranked high schools in Texas as far as grade succession and graduation rates. I mean, it's kind of a mess. And I work with the school counselor crisis interventionist. And so for students to have come across her radar means that something has gone terribly wrong in their lives. They're not on her radar without, some horrible thing happening. And she's the one who identifies students for my group. And so when I'm facilitating these groups, we're dealing with very, very serious things, a lot of trauma, whole lot of instability, a whole lot of stuff I have no business trying to address, right? I'm so out of my element. The setting is not at all Christian. It's a public school, so it's a secular setting. There is no mention of faith in these groups. Faith words are not spoken. Jesus words cannot be overtly spoken. And yet, being present with these kids and loving them where they are in their pain speaks volumes. We run these groups for 8 weeks. And at the end of the 8 weeks, we do kind of this wrap up session to say goodbye to each other and try to like close up all these things that we've opened in these friendships. And so at the end of the 8 weeks, we do this activity where we have each student take turns sitting in this chair in the corner facing the wall. And then we, the rest of the people in the room, will talk about this person behind their back. All positive things, all kind words. And it works best because they have a hard time saying nice things and receiving nice things face to face. And so we do it face to back, and it's awesome. But inevitably, one of these hooligans, one of these fools will try to put me in the chair. And they're like, Miss, you got to go be in the chair so we can do this to you. And every single time I'm like, no, thank you. And every single time they're like, we got to do it, you got to do it. So fine. I sit in this chair, you guys, and I hear the things that they say to me. The things that they say have changed their lives. And you would not believe the things that they say. They say things like, you've always had something nice to say about me. You always seem to be happy to see me, and nobody's happy to see me. You told me I could be somebody, and I kind of think you believe it. You let me have seconds at lunch. I never leave here hungry. That never happens. It's things that to me, I'm like, oh, that's not life-changing. That's just like Southern courtesy, you know? That's just Southern charm. That's not what you think it is. And then I remember that when you're dealing with a desperate world, a hurting world, people on the fringe who think they have gone so far, there's no possible way they can be seen, definitely not rescued. When you're talking about these people, an experience with kindness in the midst of their brokenness is life-changing. I don't have to go in with answers. I don't have answers. Like, you're asking me the rules of gang retaliation? I don't know the answer to this. I'm not even going to pretend that I do. I have no idea what to say to you, but I can be here with you. I can help address any physical barriers that are causing you to not heal, like food, making sure your electricity is on, clothes. I don't go in with a sermon. I just go in with my presence. We never mention faith. And yet, y'all, every single time we finish group, I don't see these kids for a long time. Months go by. I get messages from these kids. Hey, this came up in life, and I just was wondering if you could speak into this. Okay, well, now the door's open. So now you have opened the door for me to tell you a little bit more about truth. I don't have answers for you, but I do know a guy who does. And so I would love to introduce you. One girl last month messaged me randomly, and she said, hey, what do you think about the Bible? And I was like, just generally my views on it. I said 5 stars. That was it. So we talked about it. So here's the deal. This is what excites me about groups of people like this, these warriors that get together and brainstorm and dream and think, is that God still uses angels. I mean, I honestly haven't studied that. I don't know how that works. I know that he still has angels, like the one that he sent to Elijah. I also know that he now has a church. He has a church that he now sends as the agents to the fringes. He has a church that he now sends on his behalf. This is what we do. We're not a building with great programs. Sometimes we think we are, and then something like COVID comes and wipes it out, and we're like, oh, shoot, we have got to get back on track. We are the church. It's not that. We are the church. We are the people on mission. We are the arm that is ready to be slung across hurting shoulders. We are the presence to remind someone, I know that you feel so far off, but you're not. You are never alone. Can I just remind you of that? We're sent to the back row Joes in our auditorium. You know those people, the back row Joes, never sit anywhere but the back row. We are sent to high schools and to grocery stores. We are sent to lifelong Christians and to atheists. We're sent to gangbangers. We're sent to Bible thumpers. We're sent to non-binary. We're sent to cisgender. We are sent to people in tents and people in mansions, and the message is the same. And it's good news for everyone. We are sent. We are the agents as the church. And as we see the hurting along the way, like, how do we deal with it? Well, maybe we treat it like the angel did. Maybe before we address a spiritual need, we go in Jesus guns blazing. Maybe we sit in the physical need first. Man, it seems like you've had a really hard time. Could I just drop dinner by? Maybe give you a rest? Like, maybe before we address a spiritual thirst, We sit with them in a relational one. Hey, can I buy you a coffee? I would love to be your friend. Maybe before we address a spiritual distance, we sit with them in the cultural one. We say, I would be honored to hear your story. I have no idea what it's like to be you. Would you tell me what it's like to be you? We lead. We are the agents. We are the mission. We lead with love and with kindness. We learn people's names. We hear their stories before we try to figure out how to speak into them. We get this backwards a lot in church. Well, we've got to have the right answer before we address that. No. You need to have a name. You need to know somebody's name before you have an argument for how you think they should be living. When these people are ready, when the survival mode has ended and they're kind of coming up for air and they're ready to receive it, that's when we get to take them to the source of truth. This is what happened with Elijah. This is how his story ends. He's calmed down, he's rested up, and then he is brought back to the source of truth. So he eats this second miracle food that the angel made. It's like angel food. That's what the cake was. God, I missed it. All these years, I've missed it. Angel food. Oh, something new every day, living and active. So Elijah eats his second meal. And if you're a runner, this is like carb loading times a million because it lasts him for 40 days and 40 nights. I mean, this is really a miraculous meal. And it lasts all the way until he gets to Horeb, the mountain of God. And it is here that God begins addressing his heart. He calls Elijah by name, and he reminds Elijah of his faithfulness and of his trustworthiness. And he does it in the coolest ways. You know this story. God sends a wind. And I wonder if when Elijah heard the sound of the wind, he remembered the sound of God's breath breathing back into that child. And as Elijah felt the rumble of an earthquake, he remembered the rumble in his chest when the thunder shook and he knew the drought was going to end. And when God sends fire, Elijah sees the flames and he feels the heat, and he's immediately taken back to Carmel, where he watched the Lord do this incredible thing. And I feel like God is saying, do you remember? Do you remember, Elijah? Do you remember what we've done together? I was there, but I'm also here. I'm close enough to you that I can whisper. And I don't know the last time you whispered to somebody. It's a very intimate experience. You have to be very, very, very close to be able to hear a whisper. And I think God could have started here. Like he could have bypassed the angel. He could have started with this whole thing. But I think he knows that Elijah is human and he is fragile, and he was not in a place to receive it. His hurt and his pain clouded the ability to even hear. His vision was skewed. Up was down and down was up, and he didn't know what was going on. He didn't have the clarity to see the presence of God. Mm-hmm. He needed to come up for air. And so God gave him a safe place to do it, and he gave him company to do it with. You know, God's whisper eventually was not close enough, right? He still wasn't close enough to his people, and so he came. He came to walk the earth, to show us what living a life on the margins with the people on the fringes looks like. And when that life was modeled and that life was done and Jesus went back, he gave us his spirit to continue on, right? He says, you got to continue the mission. There's one of me. There's a million of you. You have to go be the church, be the living, moving, breathing, always on mission church. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have your political arguments for why this matches up with our, no. Like, you have to just be willing to go and to be and to sit and eventually to point to me, because there's going to come a point where this person it has enough clarity to realize, like, wait, why are you here? How did you get here? Why are you so kind? Oh, let's be real clear. This is not me that is so kind. Let's be real clear about this. It is not my kindness that you are experiencing right now. I would love to introduce you to whose it is. So I didn't know what I was talking about today until my friend Josh Jones, he sent me a screenshot of the flyer with my picture and the title of my message that I'd never seen before. And I was like, Fantastic. So that's what we're talking about. And I love it because I mean, I do work on the I love kids on the margins, but it just made me laugh. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is so like God. This is so perfect, especially lined up where it is in the day. Wow, pardon the Air Force One is flying over my house, maybe. I don't know. I love even where it lined up in the day because the Lord was reminding me what a hard year this has been for you guys. For you in ministry. If Satan can take out a prophet of God, he can take out a minister of God. If a prophet can find himself on the fringes, so can a minister. And I think a lot of you are finding them yourselves here now. You know, and you're coming to this conference and you're hearing a lot of great stuff. You're writing a lot of stuff down. I guarantee that you have a list of books that you're supposed to be reading. You're writing down things that you want to incorporate in your ministry. You're getting a lot of wisdom. It's been great. And I truly have been praying that it has been sustaining you. But when you log off from here, reality is going to set in. And I think some of you maybe have been putting on a front in ministry and putting on a front personally that everything's fine. And really, you're listening to Elijah thinking, oh, I'm not the dude on the mission. I'm the dude under the tree. I'm not the guy going out. I'm the one who needs to be seen right here. And if that's you, the Lord was like, just remind them, I'm so much closer. You don't need to be introduced to God. You know God. You just need to be reminded of his goodness, just like Elijah. You need to be reminded of his nearness. And I guarantee he has been sending people to help you. So I want you to think about who those people are and what they have been offering and what you need to take them up on. Because you have to be good. Because we are on mission. It's okay to not be good, but you have to let yourself be seen. We are on mission, y'all. We are a church that is in a culture that is so upside down, so jacked up, so desperate to be seen and loved. So desperate. And somehow, miraculously, we are the ones that get to bring that love to them. So we got to go. We got things to do. And I want to pray us out in that. But I want to start with maybe a dangerous prayer, but one that I think we all want to pray. And that's, God, we're here. Use us. Amen. Where we are, as we are. He needs all of us in every city, in every ministry, with every personality, with every spiritual gift. It takes all of us. And so, Lord, would you use us? Lord, every step we take with you is holy ground. And there's just something so precious. It doesn't matter how many times we do it. There's something so precious about your warriors coming together and just learning and listening and loving and seeing others and being seen. I mean, this is such a unique calling that you have on everyone here. And so, Lord, I pray that souls are refreshed in places they didn't even know needed refreshing. I pray that that wisdom was shared that was exactly where it needed to be, that ministries are going to flourish and grow because of things that were shared today and ideas that were swapped. Lord, I thank you. It's humbling truly when you think about how you use us. As broken as we are, you use us to shine your grace and your goodness in the world. And that's just unfathomable. And so I pray that we steward even our brokenness well. And that, God, we are always on mission, wherever we are, at the Kroger or in the pews, wherever we are, Lord, wherever you take us, we are on mission. We are yours. And we just end asking, God, here we are, use us. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.